Totally unacceptable and awful. Can you imagine? He would be cancelled if he said that about British Jews. If he said that about Orthodox Jews, he would be cancelled. But somehow Islamophobia is acceptable in certain quarters, and you do not get the blowback that you would if you attacked any other group.
If you remember, a few days ago, I was the first one to talk about the broadcasters, particularly the BBC, the likes of the BBC or the GP News or Sky News, flagrantly violating the Ofcom guidelines or their own guidelines, particularly related to election period. I mean, BBC, where I have worked for 12 years, and I was the one who often spoke very highly of the fact that the BBC perhaps is the only news organization in the world which has a book called Editorial Guidelines. I delivered 2 TEDx talks in India at very, very renowned institutions, one of which where the current head of Google, Sundar Pichai, went to study. So I had the privilege of talking about media ethics at those reputed institutions. And I spoke very highly about the BBC and made particular references to editorial guidelines, that we treat editorial guidelines like gospel. So it hurts me now that when I'm not part of that organization, the organization and the people working for that organizations don't seem to be taking what is written in that book very seriously. And one example is how we have been giving disproportionate coverage to Reform Party UK, even though the party doesn't have as much elected members either in the parliament or at the local body as compared to other political parties. So if you look at the coverage of the BBC in the last few days, you would see Lee Anderson, who defected from Conservative Party to Reform Party, so therefore he is not Reform Party MP. He appeared on Politics Live on BBC Two, presented by Joe Coburn. He appeared there and he made quite obnoxious comments.
Well, and there is another solution to the illegal migrant, and this is going to probably get me into some sort of hot water again with you lot in the media. And I said this to a previous Home Secretary, I won't say which one, but if some of these migrants do land on the beaches, let's take them to a remote Scottish island somewhere, out at Hebrides, where nobody lives, give them the building materials, let them set their own camps up, and I'm sure they'll be safe and free from persecution in war-torn France.
Right, well, that is just inflammatory rhetoric.
Lee Anderson appeared on Politics Live on BBC Two. Only a day later, Nigel Farage appears on BBC's flagship program, Question Time, presented by Fiona Bruce on BBC One, which has way more audience figures than BBC Two. And we are not even talking about the coverage being provided to Reform Party on other BBC platforms like the online and host of radio stations, because it's just impossible to monitor the media coverage of all these entities within the BBC. So Nigel Farage appears, and if you see Fiona Bruce, because she's been privy to the criticism made about BBC's impartiality in the last few days by people, including myself. I was the first one who raised this issue and raised it in several videos. So clearly those videos have not gone unnoticed, and I have been constantly talking with my former colleagues who say that they are equally ashamed on the rules being brazenly flouted by current BBC bosses. So it appears to me that Fiona Bruce wanted to be seen as impartial. So she asked and she mentions the fact that, look, BBC has been under criticism and for giving undue coverage to Reform Party. And then she asked him that, look, you're not even contesting, so why are you being sent to all those TV interviews by your party? At that point, Nigel Farage exposes that fake concern about the impartiality that Fiona Bruce was showing. As he said that, look, I haven't just arrived here. You invited me. So don't say me that. Don't say now that you haven't invited me. You invited me, so I appeared here. You invited me, right? So clearly, the attempt by Fiona Bruce to sound impartial and they are journalists with integrity clearly backfired because Nigel Farage busted that lies. Of course, she said that, oh, we had invited Lee Anderson, but he refused to come. That's one aspect. As program progresses, it becomes a fish market, absolutely fish market, where two individuals, Piers Morgan and Nigel Farage, they just come to blows. These are the people who majority of this country, they idolize. Because a lot of people didn't like my fact that, you can't blame everybody. Of course, I'm not blaming everybody in this country. I've lived in this country long enough to know that not everybody is bad. But the fact that Brexit happened, and Brexit happened because the people like Nigel Farage pushed an ideology to vilify a certain group of people, and majority of the people, they bought into that ideology. What does it say? And it's those same people who would be making choices either between bigger evil and lesser evil. So what does it say about the society at large? That's exactly the point I was trying to make. We know who Piers Morgan is and what he's been doing in the last 7 months through his TV programs or YouTube programs. And we know what Nigel Farage is. Just imagine with the kind of views that these people have for a community. If these two people made similar observations or similar remarks about Jewish people, just one group, Jewish people, do you think, forget about their being in job, do you think any TV channel, including the BBC, would have the courage and confidence to invite them as a panel member? You don't trust me? Listen to this journalist who is saying exactly what I have been saying for so long on ITV.
That is just totally unacceptable and awful. Can you imagine he would be cancelled if he said that about British Jews, if he said that about Orthodox Jews? He would be cancelled, but somehow Islamophobia is acceptable in certain quarters and you do not get the blowback that you would if you attacked any other group.
Of course, he says in the context of Nigel Farage, but that holds true to everybody, that Islamophobia has become a norm. We are okay now as a society that you can vilify Muslims. You can dehumanize Muslims, British Muslims, even though they are British. So what? Vilify them on fake surveys. This Nigel Farage was quoting a survey by Henry Jackson Society. You only have to you don't even have to be a rocket scientist. Just search Henry Jackson Society and the members who are associated with this society, and you will know that this society has had agenda against Muslims all these years. The people like Douglas Murray, Priti Patel, all have been associated. And there are just few names I can think of. And to say that this organization has spoken to 1,000 Muslims online to conclude that majority of the Muslims don't share British values. 1,000, right? The 5 million Muslims in this country, 1,000 they spoke to allegedly, and they came up with this narrative. I am running a poll on Janta Ka Reporter. 35% people of that 8 million monthly views that I have come from United Kingdom. And see the number of people who have taken part in this poll. This poll size is way too bigger than the poll size of Henry Jackson Society. So is it fair for me to say, actually it should be fair for me to say, that this chap Nigel Farage has zero, majority of the people, more than 70% people think that Nigel Farage doesn't have British values. So what do we do with him? How can he be a part of a leader of an important political outfit who majority of the British people think doesn't have British values? Let's go by this poll. This is authentic. It's live. Nothing, I can't even manipulate this. This is on YouTube. So these are the realities, that we are living in a difficult time. And difficult time may be for Muslims or people who are raising their voices against genocide. But if you think that in the long run, only this hatred will affect only this group of people, you are blissfully mistaken. Because when time comes, the same hatred, because these people are nobody's friends, the people who are pushing hatred for their own political agenda will not spare anybody. So if tomorrow they think that they can push that hatred against you and your children to fulfill their political ideology and goal, they will not spare you. So don't be under any impression. I have seen it from close quarter in India. The people, the merchants of hate, is nobody's friends. I may be alive, I may be dead, but this video, I hope, is there for anybody to see that if God forbid something happens to this country and the social fabric of this country, remember what contributed to that. And remember, there was somebody who was warning every day about the adverse consequences. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.